Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Rick Kamal? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Rick Kamal was born sometime around 1966 and lived in the state of Massachusetts. He went by the name Rick. His father had a PhD in physics and worked as a professor. In 1987, Rick graduated from the Boston University College of Engineering. He launched a career as a software developer and entrepreneur. In his early 20s, he married a woman named Tina. They worked together at Fidelity Investments in Boston and lived in a 5-bedroom house in Marlborough, Massachusetts. This is about 50 miles west of Boston. In 2005, the couple had a daughter named Ariana. In 2015, Rick was hired as the managing director and chief technology officer at Harvard Business School Online. On February 14, 2019, Rick and Tina purchased a mansion located on Wilson's Way in Dover, Massachusetts. Dover is an upscale town about 20 miles southwest of Boston. The purchase price was $4 million. The couple borrowed $3.8 million, but the loan was to be repaid by 2021, just 2 years after they bought the house. The 19,000 square foot, 11-bedroom, 11.5-bath mansion was built in 2000 and sat on 5 acres. During Rick's life, he started a number of companies. One of them was called EduNova. It was supposed to be some type of educational technology company. Rick appointed himself as president. His wife Tina was the chief operating officer. Sometime around the spring of 2019, Rick was fired from Harvard Business School Online, purportedly for operating a competing business. Tina was never made aware that Rick had been terminated. She thought he was still going to work. EduNova was dissolved in December 2021. This was just another disaster in a long series of failed ventures by Rick. In September 2022, Tina filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy. In December of that year, the case was dismissed because she did not pay the fees and she failed to file the necessary documents. Rick did not have any way to pay for the mansion and was served with an order to vacate in December 2022. Instead, he and his family remained in the mansion. In May 2023, the family was served with eviction proceedings. However, Rick refused to leave. Essentially, he and his family became squatters. In December 2023, the court gave the owners permission to evict Rick and his family. The eviction was to take place on December 28. In the months leading up to this dilemma, Rick borrowed a lot of money from various people. For example, he was given 2 loans for $550,000 each. For one of these loans, he used his mother's residence in Woburn, Massachusetts, as collateral. Rick also drained his mother's bank account and borrowed about $150,000 from his brother. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On December 23, 2023, Rick visited his brother and gave him life insurance beneficiary information. On the next day, he added his brother to Tina's $1.25 million life insurance policy. On Christmas Day, Rick and his family spoke to Tina's family in India using FaceTime. Everything seemed to be normal during this conversation. On December 26, Rick canceled plans for a get-together scheduled for the next day. He claimed that his wife and daughter had been hospitalized after an allergic reaction to shrimp. The same day, Rick told his daughter's boyfriend not to visit. He explained that Ariana could not text him herself because she left her phone at home. On December 27, Rick told the owner of the house, who was evicting him, that he would leave the keys to the house on the kitchen table. On December 28, 2023, the day of the eviction, Rick had agreed to vacate the property by 4 p.m. A real estate agent visited the mansion, presumably to pick up the keys, but left because the security system alarm was sounding. Later that same day, Rick's younger brother stopped by the mansion to check on Rick. This is the same brother who had loaned him $150,000. Just before 7:30 p.m., Rick's brother called 911 after finding Ariana's body in her bedroom. When the police arrived, they searched the rooms and found the bodies of 57-year-old Rick, his 54-year-old wife Tina, and his 18-year-old daughter Ariana. There was a piece of paper in the house containing a typed message. The intended recipient appeared to be the person who was scheduled to pick up the keys that day. The message read, quote, "Please note, before entering, call the police to first check 3 bedrooms on the 2nd floor. Each room will be marked by a white sheet of paper," unquote. It did not take long for the police to conclude that all 3 killings were perpetrated by Rick. He had used a Glock 22 semi-automatic pistol chambered in .40 caliber S&W against his family and against himself. The pistol was unregistered. The police found many electronic devices, like cell phones and laptops, submerged at the bottom of the pond on the property. The authorities considered this case to be closed. Rick acted alone in the murders. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Rick was always trying to impress people with how wealthy and important he was. For example, he drove a Mercedes-Benz, wore an expensive suit to work when many of his colleagues wore blue jeans, and once handed a landscaper a credit card and said something to the effect of, "Money was no object." Rick had a nice house in Marlboro. It's not clear why he thought he needed to buy a mansion in Dover. At 19,000 square feet, the house in Dover was a little big for 3 people. The mansion had a 4-car garage, a library, a 14-seat theater, a 5,000-bottle wine cellar, a massive kitchen, a gym, and a 40 by 20 indoor pool. Despite the impressive nature of the property, Rick had his sights set even higher. In October 2022, just 2 months before being issued an order to vacate the house in Dover, Rick talked to a real estate agent about purchasing a mansion on Chickamauga Lake in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The property was listed for $16.5 million. If Rick had somehow completed this purchase, it would have been the highest price paid for a house in the history of Chattanooga. In August 2023, Rick and his family visited the house in Tennessee. He made a verbal agreement to buy it, but then stopped communicating with the agent, probably because of the not having the money part. Tina was already buying furniture for the lakefront mansion, so she must have believed they were really going to move. The mansion on the lake was 23,000 square feet, which is about 4,000 square feet larger than the Dover mansion. I guess Rick really wanted to get out of those cramped conditions and finally have enough room to breathe. He desperately needed that extra 4,000 square feet. Item number 2. One of the major questions in this case revolves around Tina's level of knowledge regarding the family's financial situation. At first glance, it appears as though she didn't know what was going on. As I mentioned, she purchased furniture for the Tennessee mansion. There's also a possibility, however, that Tina had some indication of the financial struggles, like she and her husband were in this together. For example, Tina was the head of the Homeowners Association in the neighborhood where they lived in Dover. She collected dues that were supposed to be used to pay for landscaping and snow removal, but Tina kept the money and never paid the vendors. Tina told people that she graduated from Harvard University, but this was a lie. The website for the EduNova company falsely listed various people as employees, as if to make the company look larger than it was. Tina attempted to declare bankruptcy, and not long before her death, Tina had a conversation with the wife of Rick's brother. She stated that she desired to drive her family off a cliff. This makes people wonder if Tina conspired with Rick to exit this world. Rick murdered his daughter, but maybe Tina wanted to die. Could Tina have been so oblivious as to believe that she could go from stealing maintenance fees and contemplating bankruptcy to buying the most expensive property in the history of Chattanooga, Tennessee? In my opinion, Tina probably did not know the extent of Rick's duplicity. For example, Rick told people not to talk to Tina about financial issues. He actively concealed this information from her. I think that Rick managed to convince Tina that he had closed some type of business deal and they were getting ready to move to a palace in Tennessee. Rick was essentially a con artist. It is not difficult to imagine that he was able to manipulate Tina. This brings me to item number 3. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Rick was self-centered, irresponsible, grandiose, perfectionistic, cold, callous, insecure, manipulative, deceptive, falsely believed he was special, and had a sense of entitlement. Even though he had a good job, Rick wanted more. His desire was to be incredibly wealthy and powerful. A key motivation in Rick's life was proving to other people how important he was. His dreams about living a lavish lifestyle led to all types of unrealistic and half-baked plans. He was always wheeling and dealing, borrowing money, and dreaming about the next big deal that was going to make him a billionaire. He told himself that he just needed to trick one more person to be wealthy. Big money was always right around the corner. Rick was an intelligent individual, but he did not have a clear way to become a billionaire. He declared himself to be a study and life skills expert and established his company, EduNova, believing this would cause cash to rain from the sky. The problem is, Rick didn't have anything novel to sell. For example, during one interview with the media about study techniques, Rick offered advice like, schedule study time, take breaks, and don't cram. These tips are not exactly revolutionary. If Rick had declared himself to be a track and field expert, his advice would have been, run faster. Concerns about not having any good ideas did not bother Rick because he believed the image of success would make him successful. Working at Harvard, driving a Mercedes, wearing expensive suits, living in a mansion, Rick's life was all about the right appearance. There was little substance. To build his image, Rick did not let the truth get in his way. He was too important and valuable to be burdened with honesty. For example, Rick claimed that he graduated from MIT, but in reality, he had only taken a few non-degree courses and received a certificate. Participants in the courses were specifically warned not to call the certificate a college degree. Rick and his family were extremely isolated. Before they moved into the mansion, one of their neighbors did not even know they had a daughter. This enmeshed family dynamic led to Rick thinking of his family members in a collective way. They all functioned together as a unit. They were inseparable. His success would be shared with his family, but so would his failure. They would soar into the sky together or crash and burn, but nobody was getting off the plane. At some point, Rick realized that he was never going to fulfill his dreams. This loss was devastating, agonizing, and embarrassing to Rick. He had no intention of allowing his wife and daughter to find out that he had failed, because this would only amplify his sense of shame. Furthermore, Rick wanted to protect the fantasy world that his wife and daughter were living in. They still believed they were going to live a life of luxury in a magical lakefront castle in Tennessee. The justification for committing the murders was that Rick's victims died happy. In the moment that he murdered them, they felt hopeful about the future. Now moving to my final thoughts. There is no indication that Rick was ever violent before he committed the murders. His wife had accused him of being mean, but that was about it. The lesson in this case is how people who pursue grandiose fantasies accumulate a potential to be dangerous equal to the magnificent level of their dreams. The larger the dream, the greater the destructive force unleashed at the time of the failure. Rick always assumed that he could manipulate people out of money because he deserved it. He was so fantastic and marvelous, his success was guaranteed. It was his destiny to be glorified. When reality hit, Rick detonated like a bomb. His family members were trapped in his dream, which turned into their nightmare. Those are my thoughts in the case of Rick Kamal. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They consistently generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.